You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, and this is the Claret and Blue View, back once again after a couple of weeks off because of the busy nature of West Ham's calendar. Now European football is back. I'm delighted to be joined this week by a huge Hammers fan, Joe Connell. I got introduced to Joe via Luton Steve, who you all know on the podcast, of course, an immediate cult hero among We Are West Ham fans for his appearance as the opposition view earlier this season. I've met Joe a handful of times now, always interested to hear his views on the club. Joe, great to have you with us on the show. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. Now, the last time I saw you, I think we were in my new favourite West Ham pub, the Outpost, by Westfield, and I was relying on you to back me up in an argument with, to be fair, one of the drunkest people I've ever seen, and B, someone who appeared completely incapable of taking on any facts and information which might have changed his opinion on David Moyes. I assume you have a lot of conversations like that.
Yeah, well, to start, Will, thank you so much for having me on, mate. It is an honour. I know I might not be as glamorous as Dave Charles, but I'll try. I'll try and offer a bit of insight. My mate James obviously had a few too many beers, I think, and me and you are big Moisey boys, so he's coming out with some questionable opinions, and I think we had to put him straight, really, didn't we, for a little bit?
It's exactly very much like that. Yeah. Listen, mate. I mean, it's been great doing this segment on the podcast this season. It's something new to the podcast for this year, just to get a bit of a fresh perspective and a new view on things for me and James. Really, we've sat across each other a bit on the radio, on the podcast for 5 years now. And we both basically know how the other one's going to feel on most situations. And, I think the listeners have got an idea of who we are. And it's nice. It's really refreshing to me to sort of hear a different voice and different perspectives on things from West Ham fans as well as fans from the other team where we've been doing the opposition view for a while. From your point of view, Joe, just firstly, we'll get into a bit more of the nuts and bolts of it later on. How do you feel it's going at the moment for West Ham?
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, mate, I think it's all good, really. To be ninth after the fixtures that we've had opening the season. Obviously, we've had to play Chelsea, City, Liverpool, Villa away, which is so tough.
Brighton.
And that was a great scout win at Brighton.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously, our Europa campaign's gone really well. I think away at Freiburg, we were fantastic. Obviously, the Olympiacos away game was a bit tough. Me and you were there, weren't we?
Yeah.
And, that wasn't too good. But on the whole, brilliant. And obviously, our League Cup run, beating Arsenal 3-1. Obviously, we've done the most West Ham thing ever and drawn Liverpool away, which is going to be tough. But, I think they've got tough games either side of our game. I think they're playing Man United and Arsenal, aren't they?
That's it, mate, yeah.
So, hopefully they'll rotate a bit and we just got to go for it. But no, on the whole, I think it's been good. I think, ninth place after them fixtures is brilliant. Our run gets a little bit easier now in December. I know the fixture congestion will be a bit tough. Obviously, with what we were talking about off camera with Antonio and Bowen's injuries, we don't know the extent of Bowen's yet, but it looks like Mick could be out for about 3 months, couldn't he?
Yeah.
So it's,
fingers crossed.
I mean, it will be interesting to see whether he uses Divine and, whether Ings gets more run-outs, which would be a bit worrying, but
criminal that would be. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, on the whole, mate, I'm happy with it so far.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, it's good to hear. Obviously, I think you're probably, it's fair to say, cut from a similar cloth to me as far as supporting West Ham goes now, as far as your views on the club, as far as how long you've supported West Ham for, and your match going antics. Talk to me a little bit about your West Ham journey. It's like the first question I ask for most of our Claret and Blue views. Just let us know a little bit about how you got into the Hammers, what your sort of experience of supporting them has been like for most of your life. Have you always gone to games, home and away, what it's been like, and then sort of what it looks like for you now?
Yeah, sure, mate. I mean, I come from a West Ham mad family, really. So growing up, my dad, he's been a season ticket holder for what, about 30 odd years now. So he used to take me, and I've got an older sister. So her first game was probably in Billy Bond's era, early 90s, West Ham. I started going when I was about 8 years old. I remember my first game was League Cup against Oldham, and we lost 1-0, which sort
Jesus.
of
What year was that?
2002, I want to say.
Right.
So I think it was Roda. I remember, our team was like Defoe, Di Canio. I think we put out quite a strong side, and we still lost. That sort of set me up nicely for the next, 16 odd years later.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Barkingside in East London.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so
An actual East Ender then.
Yeah, sort of, mate. Yeah, so it was pretty easy to get down to Upton Park. Because my dad had that season ticket, it'd kind of alternate between taking me, my sister, my uncles, all of my whole family of West Ham, basically. And my grandma, my granddad used to have a season ticket in the 60s, those halcyon days. Bobby Moore. And yeah, it's just kind of been passed down to me for better or for worse. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, I think David Moyes has, aside from Lauren Greenwood, probably been the best manager in our history, really. And I feel so privileged to have really got stuck in and been a fan throughout this period. And since we made the move for the London Stadium, I've had a season ticket myself. So yeah, I kind of, although I do miss Upton Park, I think of London Stadium as our home now, really. And I think, after those European nights we've had there, it sort of cemented its place in history, West Ham history.
Yeah, and listen, mate, I've said it to plenty of people before, and not that I don't at all think badly or judge anyone who doesn't like the London Stadium and doesn't go because of that. I've got no qualms with that whatsoever. But I think the choice we were left with as fans, because none of us voted on the move, was, well, if you hate it that much and you don't go, then you don't sort of have a football club anymore. You don't get to do a thing that you love. And I totally agree with you. I just think that some of those nights we've had there have been amazing, genuinely spectacular, enjoying games, Sevilla at home, particularly, even Chelsea at home, early doors before the European stuff come. I'll always remember some of those games there, because I just think automatically celebrating like that and 60,000 West Ham fans singing instead of 35,000 is amazing. And I agree. I think the stadium is only as good as the people in it and the football that's being played anyway. Just it was at Upton Park. Definitely. But it was a case. Would I rather West Ham be playing at Upton Park still in a bigger, more a refurbished version of it? Yeah, probably I would. Yeah. But they're not. So it's just a choice from my point of view, to not keep banging on about it and to make the best of it, because otherwise I'll just be miserable forever and I wouldn't have a football club to support. So
I completely agree.
I do make you right on that. Yeah, mate. I like to do this when everyone mentions their first game. West Ham v Oldham Athletics, 6th of November, 2002. So almost 21 years ago to the day, just over 21 years ago. 1-0 to Oldham. Uriah Rennie, League Cup was the ref. League Cup third round, 21,900 at Upton Park. How's this for a lineup? David James, Gary Breen, Christian Daly, Ian Pearce, Scott Minto, Michael Carrick, Edward Cisse, Joe Cole, Steve Lomas, Titi Kamara, and Jermaine Defoe. How the hell that team loses to Oldham? Sebastian Schemmel, Nigel Winterburn, and Richard Garcia came on early in the second half, or Richard Garcia waited until the end. The Oldham team, I recognise one name out of that. So Legs Pogliacomi was the goalkeeper, never heard of him. Clint Hill, David Beharel, and Fitz Hall is the defender, I remember. Did he play for QPR?
Yeah, one size fits all.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, him and Clint Hill, I think.
Chris Armstrong, did he play for Tottenham? Was it the same one?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Could have been the same one. David Aries, that might actually be No, that's not the Johnny era as it was. Who used to play for West Ham. Josh Lowe, Paul Murray, Wayne Andrews, Carlo Carrazin, and John Eyre up front. Yeah, not names, I must admit, that I remember. Dean Holden was on the bench for Oldham. But, I mean, what do you remember about that game? How old were you? And what do you remember from that?
Yeah, no, I'd have been, I think I'd have been 9 then. And I just remember going down with my dad. He always used to go to the Black Lion. So
Right.
I remember us parking the car, going to the Black Lion. He saw a few of his pals there. He's been going West Ham for God knows how long. So they always used to go to the Black Lion. I remember, the ceilings were really low.
Yeah,
all the geezers packed in there pre-match.
proper moody.
Yeah, proper.
Yeah.
I used to know the landlord there, so he used to speak to him for about 20 minutes. And I just sort of stood there on my own. So I remember that. And then doing the walk down, going through all the houses, and then like Upton Park just sort of creeps over the top of the houses. I remember seeing the top of it, and we used to his season ticket was in the East Stand nearer the away fan. Yeah. So
upper or lower?
We were upper where we were. What about you? Is that the same?
Yeah, but upper East Stand upper, row D, seat 171, but the other end it was in line with the penalty area at the Bobby Moore end rather than the away fans.
Yeah. I mean, sitting there in itself was so funny because
what an experience.
Yeah, you'd get so much banter between the away fans and that little corner. It was always going off there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I remember like walking out Upton Park, you'd smell the grass as you walk out.
Yeah.
All the burgers on Green Street. It was special. It was a little cauldron, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then obviously we turned up with a partnership of Jermaine Defoe and Titi Kamara, and then lost 1-0. So that set me up, like I said, for the next 16 years or so.
Yeah. Did you sort of, because I was too young really I didn't have any agency over whether I went to West Ham or not. I think my first game in 1997, I think it was. I think I was 5 or 6.
Right.
So I didn't have a choice really. It was just I was there, and I sort of vaguely remember it. Did you sort of feel at that stage you were desperate to go back, or because I think it was fair to say most people would be like, "We lost 1-0 to Oldham, mate. Why the hell did you carry on going?"
Yeah, no, that's a good question, really. I did because it was kind of part of our identity as a family, weirdly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like I remember down our road where we used to live, there was like a new family that moved in, and they put a big Tottenham flag on a flagpole. My dad was like, "No, you've got to put your West Ham flag out the window, like just to let them know that we're here." Do you know what I mean? But it's always been that kind of thing. It's always been such a massive part of all our lives, West Ham.
Yeah.
And even from that age, my mum buying me all the annuals at Christmas, and I've still got them going back 20 odd years. She still buys me them now, even though I'm 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She never, even though we turned out an absolute stinker of performance, I just wanted to get back there. And I think I went a few more times that season. Obviously, that was the season where we went down, wasn't it, with 42 points. But yeah, it's just little things, you remember your dad listening to games on the radio and like talk sport driving home, and it'd be like, "Oh, for God's sake," like, losing 3-0 to Bolton, as we always used to do at the Reebok. And it's just always been a part of us.
Yeah, no, fair enough, mate. I like that. That season in particular, I think obviously we're similar ages anyway. And that was when I think I had I shared a season ticket with my cousin that year. The year we went down, and then the first season in the Championship we got one each, and it was a strange old thing, wasn't it? Because I remember, I don't know if you feel the same. Everyone was, weren't they, in love with Jermaine Defoe that year. That was the season he was absolutely mustard. And I know West Ham weren't, and we're unlucky to go down, but you didn't really realise at the time, obviously. I remember watching Joe Connell and Paolo Di Canio play, just how lucky You had no idea at the time, did you? But
Yeah,
Jermaine Defoe as well. He was absolutely sensational.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, it was an odd time. But then, did you go more regularly in the championship season then?
Yeah, so it's still kind of at that point it was probably going about 5 or 6 times a season.
Yeah,
And that kind of carried on its way through the championship when we went up again. Obviously, the first time of asking with Neil Shipperley when he scored that goal against us
at Cardiff, of course,
in the final. Yeah, so throughout that season, the next one when Bobby Z put us up, and then back in the Prem, and then that's when I started to go a little bit more when we had. I think through the Zola years.
The
Unfortunately,
dark ages. That's what I call
yeah.
that. Yeah. The
See,
Zola, the Kirbishley, the day with the dark ages, mate. Yeah.
that was tough.
They all
Wasn't
just
it?
merge into one. After Tevez left, after that season, there's a probably about basically like 10 years of supporting West Ham that just smushes into this one like bleak spell for me. I know we had one season the championship and I went loads then and I enjoyed it, or like away games as well. But yeah, there's just one big bleak spot for me, to be quite honest, until David Moyes' second spell, really. It was just so much of the same shit, wasn't it? And I don't know.
No,
it was.
I agree. I agree with you. And I think, it goes back to what we were saying at the pub when my mate was a little bit drunk. Times like this, you can never dream of. Like when we were watching, Radislav Kovac under Avram sort of can't play a ball 5 yards. We were just absolutely pathetic. But now Moyes made us into a cohesive unit, and I think another testament to that is we always used to kind of be everyone's second team. Little old West Ham, they're play good football, but they don't really bother.
But we'll always beat them. Yeah.
But now we're like, we're a proper side. And I think he's brought that pragmatism, Moyes, and he's completely changed the ethos of the football club.
Yeah.
And,
No, I quite agree, mate. I quite agree. What does it look like for you now then supporting West Ham? You still live up sort of around that way and get to London Stadium? Where's your seats, that sort of thing? Where'd you drink before?
Yeah, mate. So I've had a season ticket now for 3 seasons. That's my own. So I haven't been sharing with my dad.
Yeah.
I'll go with my mate Ross, who originally the season ticket was his dad's, and his dad stopped going, so I bought him out basically. And I go with pretty much all my family, lots of my dad's friends that he's been going with for years. We all go together. Before a game, we'll have a few beers at the Heineken bar outside the ground.
Yeah.
Which is actually quite a good laugh. And then I sit in 131, row 11, so quite close to corner flag.
Mate, I'm pretty certain Jonesy, obviously everyone listening will know exactly who Jonesy is, co-host on the podcast. I think you sit about 10 rows in front of him, because were you sitting in your season ticket games for the Arsenal game?
Yeah, I was there, mate. Yeah.
Because I went and sat with Jonesy on a rare occasion. He had a spare ticket. So I went and sat with James for the game, and I saw you walk past me. So pure coincidence. But yeah, I think you sit about 10 rows in front of James, slightly to the right of him in that corner. But they're pretty decent seats, aren't they? A bit more atmospheric.
Mate, I love it. Yeah. So we always stand where we are. And, the atmosphere, obviously, it's, not kind of chicken run up to park levels, but it's still brilliant. And all the people we sit around go every week, and it's so nice because you kind of, you make new friends, and it's so good because every now and then one of my dad's lot has a spare, and my sister's started to go a little bit more again now. So she's had 2 kids. She's firmly back on supporting West Ham now, so she's sort of leaving the kids with my brother-in-law, and then she's coming down every weekend. But she's like standing with us as well, and it's just great. It's like a little community where you have your season tickets, aren't they? So.
Yeah, because that has been the criticism, isn't it, or one of the criticisms of London Stadium. And look, I really enjoyed it when I come and stood down there for that Arsenal game. But one thing I sort of found is that, and I do find it generally these days, is that I don't know that I was really disappointed that Arsenal game. You're beating Arsenal. We're in a bit of a tough spot anyway. I sort of expected and hoped and wanted the entire stadium to be buzzing. I mean, where you sit, there is a little pocket of sort of atmosphere there, and it seems there's a few sort of dotted around the stadium now, rather than obviously before you had the Bobby Moore lower, then you had Chav Corner at Upton Park, and then the little bit in the East Stand as well, like you mentioned. And everyone would sort of join in off of that, but it all seems a little bit spread out now. And frankly, a lot of people who I find just care less about the football and about West Ham, and it's more just a nice day out to go and watch some Premier League football, have a hot dog. And look, I've sort of nothing against that, but I just feel you should go to Upton Park and really feel like you were part of something.
Yeah.
Whereas now it very much feels, this was Steve Hart, who come on the Claret Blue View earlier in the season, who said now a lot of the time, not only him, but he feels that so many people there are there as if they were sort of going to the theatre. They're there to watch a performance rather than they're there because they're desperate for West Ham to win the game of football.
Yeah. I pretty much agree with that as well, to be fair, mate. I think obviously in that ground, it's a little bit harder to kind of get that like cerebral little atmosphere that we had at Upton Park, just because you're, further out of the pitch and more spread out. But I don't know whether like a safe standing section somewhere would really help, I think. I've actually stood in the Bobby Moore lower, and I think that's pretty good for it as well. But, I make you right, and I see people leaving early as well.
Yeah.
Why? Because you just get stuck at that silly stop and go thing anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well stay. I just can't, And I think you're right. But then is that because of the expectations now that under Moyes, like they've, people thinking...
I honestly think, mate, I think it's that it's a combo of it's a bit of a it's a bit of a ball ache to get out of there sometimes, but B, I honestly just think it's because a lot of the sort of newer type of fans that go in there, and this isn't me knocking these people, by the way, it's just an observation, is that they just care less than, and I'm saying that from someone who currently and for most of my life, West Ham doing well has been one of the most important things that would affect my mood. Not overly, I'm not saying that's a healthy way to live, but I think, and at Upton Park, I think you've only got across the world, right? People will say, oh yeah, Man United have got 500 million fans, and it's like, or they might have 500 million fans who've who've clicked on a membership thing or would answer a survey saying they support Man United. But what I think West Ham have got a hardcore of 35 to 40,000 proper fans, people around the world who properly care and love West Ham and are really passionate about it. And I just think when you've moved from a stadium that I think it was Upton Park held that right amount of people, right? And there's probably another few more who would come in for the odd game. I just think when you go to a 60,000 arena, you put 35,000 proper passionate fans in there, and then the rest is filled up with or not even West Ham fans, maybe just locals who can get a cheap ticket to see Premier League football, or people who don't mind West Ham. And because that's what I think it is, because there's no way, if West Ham are, my rule is, if West Ham are within a goal either way, right? If they're winning, I never leave early. I never leave early if we're winning. If it's a draw, never leave early because we could get a winner. And if we're winning, if we're losing by a goal, never leave early because we can still equalise. I have left early in the past, but I honestly think when I look at people and it's West Ham are winning 1-0 or it's 1-1 with 5 minutes to go of normal time and they go, I'm just like, all I look and I go, well, you don't care about West Ham anywhere near as much as I do, because I'm here for that moment of joy. If you could quite happily miss the whole reason we've come, miss the moment of joy, the equaliser or the winner, and it means you get home half an hour early, that you don't love West Ham as much as I do. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. It's that London Stadium now, and I'm genuinely not knocking these people, and the club would prefer it that way because their colour of their money is the same as the colour of mine. But I just think that's what it is. You've got people who can take or leave West Ham winning or not. It's probably a more healthy way to live. But and You know what I mean? And that's why I think there's so many people in that mindset in London Stadium that's why the ground's half empty by the time the end of the game comes.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there might be a kind of transition within our fan base. So, kind of first generation West Ham fans now have started to go.
New era West Ham fans, I call
exactly.
it.
Yeah. And obviously they weren't there to see the Avram days and all that. Yeah. And I think in a way,
when all we had was the passion of the fans, that's all West Ham fans had, wasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And I think in that sense, maybe Moyes has been a bit of a victim of his own success because he set that bar so high now. And it's kind of expected for us to, to finish 8th or 7th or whatever, and
maybe, mate.
Cup run but yeah, I think you're right, mate. And I think maybe after a bit of time, maybe 10 more years, hopefully we'll get that kind of core bigger, 55, 65,000 fans that are as passionate as we are, and hopefully we can really.
I just don't think that will happen, mate. I don't think you can turn back time, because I think part of it is having experienced Upton Park. I think there's a whole generation of fans now who never went. And it I already start sounding like an old granddad, back in the old days when football was better. But when West Ham was better, like West Ham was better. But like the experience was better, but West Ham were way worse. So it's hard not to correlate our current success with the fact we're in the stadium. And if I'm honest, if someone said, oh, well, look, you can go back to Upton Park at the beginning of next season, but we'll take away Lyon away, we'll take away Prague from you, we'll take away all the grounds you've been to watch West Ham in Europe, I'd say no.
Yeah, definitely.
I honestly would. So it's just different. And I do think for me, it's just important to accept that it's different, not dwell on the negatives, because that's adding no value to my experience of supporting West Ham all my life. And just accept this is the club I've got now. It's still West Ham. I still get experiences, and to be honest, mate, like you'll know it. You were out in Athens. That'll stay with me forever, even though the game was terrible. You're going with your sister. I've been with my dad and stuff.
Yeah,
those experiences I'll remember them till I die.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is that give and take thing. Obviously we did lose that kind of us and them mentality when we left Upton Park, because I think it was such an horrible place for away teams to go, and it was our
home fans, to be fair.
No, you're right. But yeah, as you say, like Seville and Lyon, Frankfurt, Olympiacos, like Prague, like these are just, if you told me this would happen 10 years ago, I'd have been like, no chance.
Yeah.
And I guess, as you say, that success has come with the stadium move. So, I've got no regrets really.
Anyway, mate, let's move on, because we've done nearly half an hour or whatever on just your experience of supporting West Ham. I want to talk about some topical stuff a little bit more. News coming out as we're speaking. It's the 20th of November, which is Monday. News come out. Jared Bowen hasn't travelled with England to North Macedonia because he's got what's described by Gareth Southgate as a small injury that he says won't be too serious. Not really sure on the state of that at the moment, but it appears like Jared Bowen will miss at least one, maybe some more West Ham games. Also suggestions that Mikel Antonio has hurt himself with Jamaica and is going to be out for months rather than weeks. Some people even talking about a potential season ender at this stage. Now, semi tongue-in-cheek, I said good, but that's obviously not good, because he's still miles better than Danny Ings, and I'd only be happy without Antonio in the picture if Jared Bowen plays up front. I think the team we played against Nottingham Forest, we started, was our strongest 11. But, it's easy and quite understandable. It just flags up the farce that is West Ham's inability to sign a striker this season and find one that fits the system with Haller and Scamacca. I was glad. I'd rather do that. I'd rather sign someone and it not work out every season than just do what we've done this year and so many before and sign no one. What do you make of that whole situation with Bowen and Antonio? Where do you think that leaves us? And talk to me a bit about the striker situation.
Yeah, I mean, well, first, mate, with the striker situation, I think our talent ID for that area of the pitch is just bizarre. Um, even when we went back in, sorry, when we
I
got
don't even know what talent ID is, but I agree with you already.
Yeah, no, but someone to fit Moyes' system, basically.
Yeah.
If you're buying a striker like Gianluca Scamacca, you need sort of runners off of him. Scamacca's never running channels. He's never, going to get stuck in like Mick does, hold up the ball, bring others. He's not that kind of player. And I thought we'd have learnt our lesson with Haller, but we did exactly the same thing, which I just find utterly bizarre. I see that we're kind of looking at Solanke again.
Bloke's allergic to scoring goals, and West Ham are looking at him.
Yeah, and then obviously Steiden's, outlined a few. I think it's that Adams from Montpellier that he's looking at. I haven't seen anything of him, but apparently he's more suited to playing in a one up top system. The way that Moyes plays, you need to be a grafter up there.
Yeah, a scrapper. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
But it wouldn't hurt if you've got all those skills and can put 10 goals in the net every year, would it? Do you know what I mean?
100%, mate. Yeah. But I think, if Bowen's injured, I mean, that's just a ridiculous blow, isn't it? I think this season he's been arguably our best boy. He has been our best player, I'd say.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think with Kudus playing on the right now, Bowen's doing well down the middle. It's such a big blow. And I mean, I know what you said earlier, but I'm a bit of an Antonio fanboy. I love Mick. I know
even now.
Well, I think he started the season so well, with a goal at Brighton. Do you not think he was even playing well?
I think we've probably got different ideas, and I appear to have different ideas than most West Ham fans about what a striker doing well looks like is. Like a striker doing well for me, obviously it's playing well and bringing others into play, but scoring goals is quite important. How I would best describe Antonio is our least shit striker. And Divine Mabama, I don't include Mabama in that, but he's just way less bad than Danny Ings is, which is saying nothing. It doesn't mean it doesn't make him good, does it? He's swapping with Ollie Watkins any day of the week, or even Evan Ferguson.
Yeah. I mean, them two players especially, I'd agree with. But I think if you're a striker in a Moyes system, you're a bit of a sacrificial lamb at most of the time, in the sense that
Antonio has scored goals for us, though. Sorry to interrupt, but he has scored goals before, hasn't he?
Like, yeah. I'd agree.
That's what I'm saying. 10 goals a season. What did he score last year? 3 in all comps?
Yeah, last year was poor by his standards. I think the most he's hit in a Premier League season is 10, isn't it? But goal contributions would be about 15 at his best.
Yeah.
But I think we just look rudderless without him up top. Before we played Bowen up front and we were experimenting with Kudus on the right. I mean, that system's working really well. As you say, Forest, that lineup's probably our best starting 11 now. But as you put it, I think with Mick being out, I mean, Danny Ings is not a Moyes striker, is he? Like, at all.
No, definitely not.
No, and that's just not going to work. So having both Antonio and Bowen out, it's terrible really for us going forward.
To be honest, mate, look, I'm a big David Moyes fan. If he persists with Danny Ings after this, he's signing his own exit papers, in my opinion. I love David Moyes, but anyone with two, sometimes football fans are guilty of, not all the time to be fair, but I certainly am sometimes, of you sort of think, what do I know? I'm just a fan. I'm not a multi-million-pound manager. In this situation, anyone with two eyes in their head can tell that Danny Ings is, at best, if I'm being kind, he's just a really bad fit for West Ham's system. If I'm being a bit harsher, he's completely past it and nowhere near good enough to be playing the Premier League. I honestly think it's probably a bit of both. I think he could probably add value to a team who play to his strengths more. But he looks overweight. He looks like he doesn't care. His confidence is shot and it's on the floor because Moyes keeps trying to shove that square peg in the roundest of holes. I think it's insulting to fans. I think it's criminal that I don't think he should ever play for West Ham again. I think part of being a good football manager and being a successful club is also highlighting when you've made mistakes, being ruthless. Danny Ings should be nowhere near that team. And I know there's more to it with Mbama about trying to get him to sign a contract. But if you're him, I'm going, well, if you don't think I'm better than that bloke, then no wonder I don't want to stay. Like, you obviously think really, really lowly of me if you don't think I'm better than Danny Ings.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you know, my mate's a big Villa fan. I remember watching Villa a lot, you know, towards the latter end of Ings' tenure there, and I thought he was awful then. I mean, you could tell his legs had completely gone. Obviously, scored them 2 against Forest. Do you remember when we were looking a bit precarious last season? But then I think were they his last goals for the club? Like, it's just, I think it's like 35 games or something like that he's played without a goal. So yeah, if you're Divine, you're thinking, you know, what's the point if he does persist with Ings? I just hope he doesn't, because I think Mbama looks like a real good fit for what how Moyes likes to play his football, and I think he'd do really well for us, to be fair.
Yeah, I've got no qualms about people who say he's not ready yet, or like David Moyes. I think it's totally fine to say that Mbama needs a bit more time to develop, genuinely. And I think send him on loan to someone in the middle of the Championship, and then, you know, you might have a diamond there in a couple of seasons. So I understand that, but what would you do now then? So if we assume we don't know how bad Bowen is, to be fair, but assume he's out for a few weeks, what do you do in the meantime? Because I don't want to go to West Ham and see Danny Ings start a game of football.
No, we can't do that, mate. I think for right now, I'd go with Alvarez and Ward-Prowse in the middle. I'd have Paqueta in a 10. I'd put Kudus out wide on the right. I'll play Mbama, if I'm honest, and then, I mean, this spot at left wing, it's kind of like we're flogging a dead horse, isn't it, really? With every option we've got, Fornals, Benrahma and Cornet. I mean, I'd probably try Cornet there.
Mate, I would. I couldn't agree more.
What we got to lose? Like, I mean, you know, Benrahma is kind of, I mean, he just looks a shadow of the player that had a bit of like ingenuity about him last season, a spark. There's just nothing really there. Fornals looks disinterested now. I'll go and give Cornet a go. I think, you know, it's the best we could do right now. But I think you're right. I think if he does persist with Ings up front, he's just, you know, he's onto a non-starter.
Yeah, then I totally get it. You know, I'm forever fighting his corner against our own fans, basically, which is frustrating.
Same, mate,
but I honestly have got no. If he starts Danny Ings the next few games, I'll go, well, you've done that to yourself, mate. If he then gets sacked or doesn't renew his contract, I'll go, well, that's on you. Like, there's no defending that. Playing Danny Ings is defending the indefensible. Look, because quickly then, Joe, on David Moyes, his contract's up at the end of the season, which is the 20th of November now. That's not a great deal of time. You know, before you know it, the Christmas period will be on us and we'll be halfway through the season. It's been a great start to the campaign. I, to be quite frank, would have absolutely no qualms whatsoever. In fact, I'd be delighted if West Ham announced that David Moyes has signed a 2-year contract extension tomorrow. I'd be absolutely thrilled. James Jones, in our BBC Sport column for the podcast this week, has talked around it. And he's saying, look, you know, if Moisey wants a contract and wants to extend his time at West Ham, the next up to the end of the Christmas period, you'll be able to tell how much he wants it. And does he play it safe, which is sort of he's been criticised for before and doesn't always go in his favour, or does he roll the dice, take a gamble and prove, you know, sort of go down fighting to prove that he wants to stay here? What do you make of that Moyes situation, given his contract's up at the end of the season? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crucial for the kind of foresight of the club to nail him down, really, to, as you say, to a 2-year deal. I mean, he's gone above and beyond and earned that for me. I mean, first bit of silverware in 43 years, you know, and I think going forward, looking at the January window, which I think is crucial, if this news about Antonio is to be believed, that he'd be out for 3 odd months, we need to get strikers that will fit Moyes' system. I think that the transfer policy has been too kind of in between. I know that there was reports of him and Steiden not agreeing on targets and stuff like that. But I think if we were to give Moyes a 2-year deal now, there'll be a clear sort of plan of the type of player that we'd want to sign going forward, because they'll be playing in Moyes' system. And I think it's crucial, really. I think I just hope he, if it does come down to this December run that we've got, I hope he just goes for it, because he should be getting the backing of all the fans and the board alike, I think, for what he's done for this football club. So, mate, as you say, I think if he was to sign a 2-year deal tomorrow, I'd be buzzing with it.
What do you think will happen then? Because I've sort of, it's only really come into my sphere, really. We've obviously mentioned it before, but it's getting to the time now where you don't want to let this sort of thing go too long, do you? Like, you don't want to let it go into a few weeks before the end of the season, and there's a little bit of sort of mystery around it. You don't want to let that happen. We don't know, to be honest. We don't know if David Moyes wants to stay at the club.
No, true.
Honestly, he might have gone, you know what? I've had a good run here. It's time for a break or time for a change. See what I can do this year in the Europa League. And it might be we're at the Europa League, we don't qualify again. And he goes, you know what? Time for a change. But what do you expect and think will happen?
I mean, worryingly, I expect our ball to kind of flip-flop in between, what to do with him, which is, what they've done on big decisions in the past. And I think they might just leave us in limbo a little bit, which is very worrying. I could see them kind of waiting until, to see if we get European football again next season before making a decision.
But mate, that'd be May before you know that. I think that's too much instability, I think.
I completely agree, mate. And I find that really worrying. But honestly, that is what I think they'll do. I hope they don't. I really do. I hope they don't. I hope we get assurances, within the next month or so. But I think whatever happens, I think a lot of it should be on whether David Moyes wants to continue. It should be down to him. It should be his decision whether he wants to continue, because he's given us as fans, things that will live with us forever. And he should be able to go out on his own terms, I think.
I sort of agree with that. I also think, if he just starts doing a terrible job, then, you can't just hold on. But, I use this analogy a lot. Trevor Brooking gave some West Ham fans some amazing memories, but you wouldn't play him on the left wing, right? People have their time, right? That's how I feel about Antonio. I always feel bad having a go at him, because he has always sort of tried hard. But in my opinion, where West Ham are at a club, we should have moved on from him by now. It's almost not his fault that he kept getting wheeled out there. He should be playing for a Bournemouth or a Burnley or even a top-level championship team. So I'm not really of the view that because of what Moyes has done before too much, but it's still very recent and we're still in Europe. In my opinion, he's still doing well. So I don't understand how and why there's even debate over it. But I think the club need to do something one way or the other. Listen, Joe, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the podcast, joining us for another Claret and Blue View. With Will Pugh, as Jonesy absolutely loves me calling it. Just before I let you go, mate, Burnley this weekend, obviously. But for the rest of this season, whatever happens with Moyes, for the rest of this season and then beyond, what does success look like for you for West Ham, and what do you hope, want, and expect from your football club who you love so much?
Mate, I think success this season would be finishing 8th, maybe in the Conference League positions. I think having a real good go at Europa League, if we can get to like a semi-final or a quarters even, would be amazing. I think having a good go at the FA Cup, I think giving Liverpool a good run in the League Cup as well, maybe getting to the semis, and then who knows what can happen after that. Just having a good run in all the cup competitions that are available to us. And if we do finish sort of mid-table, I think that's okay. But as long as we give them a good go. But I think getting European football again next season is crucial to retaining a lot of key members of this squad, and also attracting some other players, whether that's with Moyes or without. So for me, just re-qualifying for Europe, whether that's Conference League, Europa, whatever, would be a massive success this season for me.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. I totally agree. Listen, Joe, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the We Are West Ham podcast for the first time. Really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you,
I think I need to find someone. I need to find a passionate Moyes Out fan to have on this, because the last couple of guests I've had, I don't know whether it's because lots of people just aren't idiots on Twitter who are just there for clout, or it's just people think that I'm just getting people on who agree with me on, particularly on David Moyes, but also on Said Benrahma and Mikel Antonio, which are my pet peeves these days. But look, I love supporting West Ham at the moment. It's really enjoyable. I can tell that you do too. And I think the more people I talk to, the more I air my views, the more I am aware that it's people of our generation, mate, and a bit older perhaps, who've watched us be crap for most of their life, that think the way we do. Quite honestly, it's way more enjoyable because you're not just fuming and angry all the time like a lot of the Moyes Out brigade are.
Exactly.
But listen, mate, I've got a lot of respect for you. I know you spend a lot of time and money supporting our club, just like so many other fellow fans. I know I saw you out in Olympiacos course. Didn't know you were there until I bumped into you and your sister at the airport. But I know you'll be there if we get through to the knockout stage of the Europa League. And I shall be with you too. Really, really enjoyed having you on the podcast, of course. Thanks to Luke and Steve for setting out. Just quickly, mate, what do you think the score is going to be then this weekend against Burnley?
I'm going to go for a 3-1 West Ham win.
3-1 West Ham win. That is Joe Connell there chatting to us on the We Are West Ham podcast, Claret Blue View, with me, Will Pugh.